Let's start things off with a confession. The only time I ever actually beat the original Metroid was using the infamous Justin Bailey cheat code to see Samus in her final form. That said, I didn't actually end up finishing Super Metroid in the last couple of years after never really having played it in the past. I'm an unabashed fan of the style of game made famous by both that series and most notably Castlevania Symphony of the Night. With such high expectations and positive word of mouth, I was eagerly awaiting Axiom Verge's release on the PS4. Let's get right into it. This is a fantastic title for fans of the genre, but in addition to the familiar elements of exploration and shooting, the game does some very clever things with the formula to stand apart from so many other pretenders to the throne. First thing that really stood out to me was when I got an upgrade which let the character alter the behaviors of some of the enemies in the environment, which was actually used in some clever ways to help solve some fairly simple puzzles early on. And the game seems to have a pretty good progression, with a good influx of new powers, weapons in the early stages, but it never felt overwhelming. One of the coolest unique power-ups I've encountered so far was the ability to deploy a drone that works kind of like the morph ball from Metroid. There have even been some extended sequences where you have to navigate a large stretch, and the unique part is that the drone has its own life bar, and failing during one of these sequences forces you to start the whole part over again. Which brings me to the next thing about the game, which is the difficulty. This is not an easy title, and you can and will die quickly if you aren't careful. The save points, however, are generally pretty well spaced out, so dying doesn't penalize you that much. And also, unlike some other recent games, I'm just looking at you, Ori, you still keep any power-ups you may have collected. The bosses I've faced so far are also pretty smart about you implementing a strategy based on some of the power-ups you have recently acquired. I had this discovery after dying several times to one of the early bosses, but after messing around with some of the non-weapon powers, I found using my code altering power revealed some cleverly hidden platforms that made the battles much more manageable. And the satisfaction that comes with from defeating a boss like this and seeing a cool animation makes it all worthwhile. Speaking of the animations, the game looks great, with some really cool effects layered onto the very retro style aesthetic. The character animation, while simple, actually does some pretty cool things, and I like it when my dude in his lab coat jumps around this alien world. Also, the music really shines, and I found myself missing it when things would occasionally go quiet. The story seems plenty serviceable and weird for the environment, but honestly, I'm not playing this game for that aspect at all. So yeah, this game is great, and I think anyone with a PS4 owes it to themselves to pick it up and enjoy a game becoming rarer and rarer to see done well. And with Konami being out of the business of making new Castlevania games in this style, and Shadow Complex 2 being a thing of myth and legend, this may be one of the few times in the foreseeable future we get to enjoy a title of this caliber.